The early morning class was so good. I felt so good after that.
Oh, nice.
But today that was my weakness. That's where I had all surgery. You know those closed press ups?
Yeah.
There was 10 of them, wasn't there, Dave? You're on class.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I could do 3, and that was.
I couldn't even do 1. I was just like, I did the skull crushers, and then I tried to do like 1 or 2 of the narrow ones, and I was like, nope. I'm just gonna sit and wait until we do the skull crushers again.
Well,
because my elbows have been hurting as well. I'm just like, I'm broken. I don't know what's happening to my body.
When I was getting hotter and sweatier during the skull crushers, I was getting really worried because I couldn't hold on to the barbell because it was
really frightening, wasn't it?
I was using a 10-kilo dumbbell, and my hands are too small to hold them, and I was like, this is gonna like literally crush my skull.
I'll let Mark know that the skull crushers might not be a good thing.
No, I was really scared.
We all survived.
We survived, and it was scary but exciting. It was great.
Yeah, I was always like, and my arms were like shaking. I was like, this is gonna fall.
Oh no!
What class was this morning?
Train.
I look forward to looking at that there.
Yeah, it was like challenging. I found it challenging.
Yeah, I think
I've just joined in.
Sorry?
P-Dog has just joined in now.
Ah, cool. We'll give him a minute then.
I told him it was all about what goes through your mouth, Paul, yesterday, and what happens to it, and alcohol, and that sits in your stomach. And I said, it was good. You should come in. Oh, yeah, it does sound good, actually. I can't remember. It all comes out the one end, though, he said.
I love him.
I love that, Paul. It's just for education, I say.
Yeah. No. There he is. There he is.
I'm here.
Yes, P-Dog. All right, we'll get started then. So yesterday we talked quite a lot about the small intestines, their purpose, what they do, and also the stomach. So today we're kind of moving a little bit further down now. So when you still digesting food in the small intestine, because obviously it is nearly 25 foot worth of small intestine, the liver plays a massive part in it. So is everyone familiar with what the liver does and why it does what it does? Yeah, so it's technically a gland. It's actually not, it is an organ, but it's a gland. It's really good at rebuilding itself as well, right? Obviously, it depends how much you abuse it, but it is actually really good at regenerating itself. Its purpose is really to help break down molecules a little bit more in food. So it does that through bile. So it releases bile. Believe it or not, it releases like a pint of bile a day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's mad. But as part of that bile, that's there to help break down the nutrients and the food that we need that little bit more. It's also there to act as a screen. So everything gets screened. Your alcohol, your toxins, your nutrition, everything is screened by the liver. Obviously, the liver has to work overtime because it does work to remove toxins from the body as well. So when you have a big drinking sesh, that's the liver that takes the punishment for that, and the kidneys as well, right? They're both responsible for it. But the liver is the one that fundamentally does a lot of the legwork. So I kind of wanted to make sure you guys are aware the liver is actually quite a big organ. It's about the size of an American football, so it is pretty big. It sits just below your diaphragm in the back. So sometimes if you get backache, that's actually not always muscle. Sometimes, especially if you've got a hangover, it's because your liver's taken a bit of a beating, the same as your kidneys. But that's kind of the function of what the liver does. Sorry, someone's just knocked at the door, and I have a feeling the dog's going to go mental in a minute. So if he does, I'll mute. Don't worry, guys. So that's the main purpose of our liver. The gallbladder plays another part. It's a smaller part, but that stores all the bile that's created by the liver. So bile is there to help digest fat a lot more. So if anyone at any point has ever had their gallbladder removed, I don't know if anyone has, It's usually a sign and a point where the doctors will tell you you need to have a low fat diet because you can't digest the fats as well, because gallbladder does play a massive part in that. So if you ever have any gallbladder trouble, like a low fat diet is usually what's suggested for it. It plays a big part in it because bile's used to digest your fats. And if it's got nowhere to store it, makes it a little bit hard to digest your fats, right? So that's kind of where those kind of organs play a part. And then you have the pancreas. So everyone know what the pancreas does? No? So the pancreas releases a ton of different enzymes. It releases 3 specifically. One's responsible for the breakdown of your protein, one's responsible for your carbs, and one's responsible for your fats as well. So you may have heard of like lipase, which is the enzyme that we use for fats. There's different ones for each one, but the pancreas solely works on those kind of 3. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, this is currently what I'm having to look at, guys. My dog. He's not very happy because the postman knocked on the door. So then we get onto the large intestine. So once the small intestines have helped absorb all of those extra things, with the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder all working at the same time, we then move into the large intestine. So believe it or not, your food or all of the waste will sit in your large intestines for anything up to 25 hours. So 12 to 25 hours is how long it takes to process food through the large intestines. It's actually shorter than the small intestines. So they're actually, I think it's only something like 7 to 10 foot compared to the 20 odd of the small intestines, but it's got it's a much wider diameter. Food moves around 2 inches every hour. So all of the waste moves around about 2 inches in your intestines every hour. So what you ate first thing yesterday morning probably still hasn't made it all the way through your body yet. Does that make sense? Like, there's certain things that will help it move along. So if you are eating, you are
Chilies.
I didn't hear a word of that.
Chili.
Still, it's not necessarily going to help it. So fiber is the big one. If you want to speed up your digestion and how your intestines move, like fiber is the biggest part of it. But your large intestines are responsible primarily for water, salt, and vitamin K. A couple of other little bits, but nothing too crazy. Does that make sense? So yeah, your food goes through quite a long journey. If you think about it, from the time you eat it, up to 4 hours it could be in your stomach, all of the time it spends in the small intestines, and then to spend it up to potentially another 25 hours in your large intestines. Like, your food's in your, like, it's in the body for a long time for those nutrients. So it's really important to make sure you're eating the right kind of things to support those. So for the intestines, as I mentioned, fiber is one of the biggest ones. It helps it move along quite nicely, and trying to avoid those things that flare it up. So we talked yesterday about like the small intestines. If they're damaged in any way, they can't absorb nutrients in the same way. So you actually end up with much more waste, and the liver has to work harder to break that waste down a little bit more. Does that make sense to everyone? Was that on par with Alana's book, Karen?
Don't worry. Not that I'm fact or anything.
All right, cool. I just wanted to check, So from our perspective, guys, the other thing that is important to consider at this point of digestion is your cholesterol. So cholesterol is predominantly fundamentally controlled by the liver and a few other bits and pieces. You need cholesterol. You just don't want ridiculously high cholesterol. Does that make sense? So like I said, when we spoke yesterday, the more you can keep those whole natural foods, the more the body's going to function in the right way and break it down. Once we start adding in, so one of the things that you find with processed foods, I mentioned a couple of times, fat is really hard to digest for our body. So the more processed food you have, the more fat you tend to be consuming, especially kind of like the not so healthy fat. And that's why we tend to struggle a little bit more with processed foods and the body not reacting as well. If you think about how long it takes the body just to break down some simple healthy fats, then you add even more complex fats into it, you're just putting the body into overdrive. There are a few things that will affect how the intestines work. We talked about that yesterday as well. Large intestines is stress. If you're stressed, you're going to struggle. You'll get cramps. Your bowels aren't going to move as well as they do. But for women as well, the time of the month also has a massive impact on it, because of the change in your hormone levels and what's going on with the body. So it's really, really important. Just if you don't eat a lot of fiber, guys, try and work out where you can get a little bit more fiber. The best way is veggies. Veggies is one of the best forms of fiber that you can get. Does that make sense? Don't just reach for the Alpen All Bran kind of stuff. Try and get the veggies in there. So that's kind of like a real quick 101. Our digestive system works slightly differently. So I mentioned before, like the small intestines are really long, like we talked about that. The large intestines are obviously a little bit smaller. The reason that it kind of is important is your large intestines will be smaller if you're an omnivore. So as animals, we are an omnivore because we have smaller, large intestines. Plant-based eaters, like cows, rabbits, those kind of things, they actually have really long, large intestines in comparison because of the amount of fiber they eat. It needs to move through the body and absorb slightly differently. So it's just one thing to bear in mind when kind of thinking about food. Plant-based is awesome, obviously. I can personally do it. But we are designed to have a lot of protein come through our body, which is why supplementing when you're vegetarian or vegan is actually really important. That doesn't mean we're built to just live off of meat. Like the carnivore diet is not a good one for us either. So it's about finding that balance, right? Our body, if you think about it, we can't process fats in the same way, and meats naturally are a lot higher in fat than any other thing. So yes, you get more protein, but if you think about your steak, you also get quite a lot of fat that comes with that steak. Even if you cut it off, it's still quite a fatty bit of stuff. So it's just small little things to bear in mind when you're thinking about your food and how you prep your food, and also knowing what kind of foods flare you up. So if you do suffer from IBS or any of those kind of things, or dodgy stomachs when you eat, just think about what you've eaten and jot it down and see whether or not it's been processed or you've got whole foods in there, or something specifically has flared it up. Like we talked yesterday, citrus fruits, tomatoes, those kind of things can cause flare-ups. Has anyone got any questions?
I do. So
Okay.
I have a wheat intolerance, which started when I first got into CrossFit quite some time ago, and I learned that it was because everybody is allergic to wheat. You build up an intolerance against it. Is that quite true? Or is that
Yes and no. So some of it's not necessarily wheat in its wholest form. It's how we've processed it over the body. So I mean, this is just from my point of view. If you think about how the body's not changed, but our diet's changed, like we never used to eat bread or make bread. Same as beer, right? Beer isn't that old. Yes, they used to eat it and ferment stuff, but if you think about the process it goes through that changes it, that's usually what brings up an intolerance. Wheat is one that can be quite a big one for people, but if you've been brought up around it, you tend to build up a tolerance to it rather than an intolerance to it. So it's things like if you we'll take the Scandinavians as a great example. They don't tend to eat that much from a wheat bread process point of view. So then when they come to these cultures, like in Malta, it's a great example. They live off pasta bread. Like pasta and bread is everything because of the Italian influence they have, and also a bit of an Arabic Middle Eastern influence. They react quite badly to it because it's not something their stomach knows how to process or their intestines know how to process, and it can cause damage. But again, it's almost like not necessarily an allergy, but if you do find you're intolerant to something, even if you only have a little bit, sometimes it'll affect you, sometimes it won't, right? Those kind of intolerances. And I think over time the body does build up a tolerance to it, or you mentally as well don't notice it as much because it becomes the norm, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I think for me, I got into CrossFit about 10 years ago, and I went on a paleo diet because they like to enable it a paleo diet back then. And I did that for about 6 months, and that was absolutely cutting out all breads and goodness knows what. As a vegetarian, that didn't particularly work really well for me, so not with the kickboxing as well. So I then went back onto eating normal food again, or processed foods again. And at that point, I found out that I had an intolerance. But what I find most confusing is that some days I'm absolutely fine, and then at other days I eat the same thing again, and it will send me straight overboard.
Yeah, and a lot of it will depend on what you've eaten the last couple of days, how your body's feeling, are you tired? For women, and this is women get the raw end of the deal on this, sorry guys, but hormones, like, they play such a huge part in it, because you have a different hormone that makes, like, registers whether you're hungry or you're not, and all of that kind of stuff. And during times of the month for women, they obviously are completely out of whack, and they're different, so that will also play a massive part in it. It'd be interesting to know if that potentially is part of it. I know for me, I will, like, at certain times I will just crave salty food, like savory salty food. My body's deficient in it at that point, so I need more salt, and it's little things like that will react in that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Paul, did you have a question? No, I thought you looked like you for a minute there.
No. I'm just listening, man.
That's cool. So I think for tomorrow, one of the things we're going to talk about is how everything ties together, a little bit more about cholesterol, how to maintain a healthier gut. So things that you can start doing to help with that. We obviously talked quite a lot over the last 5 weeks. We're on week 5, aren't we? Jeez. Yeah, week 5, gang. A lot about stress and management of stress and how that impacts the body. It's even bigger when it comes to your nutrition. So we'll go over a couple of the stress management tools, things like winding down before going to bed, and how to enable your recovery to help you digest food better and have better gut health in that way too. Everything's linked, guys. It's pretty crazy.
Very crazy.
Yeah, man, it's crazy that it's been 5 weeks. I can't believe it's already
I
been
know.
5 weeks.
Does this
Struggling
carry
with
on, Jen,
so
until we get back to normal?
I'm going to have a chat with the guys tomorrow. We have a team call, but I think I probably will carry it on, and just like we'll pick some topics each week to go through. If you guys are finding it helpful, like if you guys don't want it, then no, but if you guys are finding it helpful, we can kind of move into a little bit more around not necessarily all the sciences, but kind of like the emotional elements, how to deal with those, and get a little bit more kind of into the nitty gritty of how to change those habits even more.
Yeah. I think it's really good and really useful to, even it's just actually to see some more people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. Like when I wasn't coaching in the morning, this was literally the only contact I had with people apart from the team call. And I was like that, yeah, Mark, I need some classes back now. But it's like, we'll carry on with it. And it's just whatever you guys want to learn. Like if there's anything you want to know, drop it down, and we'll have like an open session every week where we can just talk about anything you guys want. I mean, we do it at the end of pretty much everything anyway, but just in the WhatsApp group, on My Coach, on Facebook, we'll keep talking about it, and we'll build in even more habits moving forward.
Yeah.
I don't know about you lot, but I feel like I feel like this is actually the start point. I think it was so crazy. It was just sort of keeping a hold of everyone a little bit. And then now I've got the structure in place, like another few weeks of this. I'm scared to get back to normal because I'm not quite there. I've just started and I'm happy with it. But yeah, I don't want anything to change in case it.
Yeah, and like I'm feeling very much the same. Like for me, I'm quite nervous about going back to what a different routine is going to look like, and also changing quickly is huge, right? We've gone from this was our normal life. All right, we're all washing our hands a little bit more to no one's going anywhere. And now we're all kind of settling into that. This is a new normal, as they keep calling it. And then it's what's the next one look like? Who's going to work first? Who's going to be off of calls? Who's, it's
a bit weird.
Bit like, ooh, geez, how am I going to prep for that?
Yeah,
I've got to know.
Sorry, PT.
I was just saying, I've got to know more people in the last 5 weeks from the gym, more people personally, as someone I've met before, than in the last 2 years.
No, like I totally agree. Like, I've been getting to talk to people a lot more, right? It's not just people coming in for a class and running back out. It's actually have conversations. It's pretty cool.
I'm really liking it. Like I probably didn't talk to any of you guys before this.
We didn't probably
I
talk to
did.
you.
I probably didn't even know you, any of you guys. I
The
don't think
gym's going to
so.
reopen, guys, and Bee's just going to be living at the gym.
Yeah, I'll be like, hey guys, I'm here.
No, it's I think as well, like just how to handle, I think prepping change a little bit more, and how we're going to handle that moving forward is going to be really important for everyone, like readapting to change, getting into the new routines. And I think we talked about it when the gym reopens as well, doing another challenge again, just to help with that transition, because I think it's going to be tough for people, right? Really tough.
It's going to be weird.
It's going to be strange for me.
Yeah.
I'm loving the fact of just rolling out of bed, getting a cup of coffee, and then going to the gym and doing a workout, as opposed to having to drive 40 odd minutes to get there. You know what I mean? So
I was joking with Jules yesterday. I don't know that I can drive. I haven't driven my car for 5 weeks.
Really?
I haven't even
driven
got
a
in
car
it to drive.
I haven't
So
driven
you
a car in
start.
like almost 2 years, and I'm like,
Yeah, it does. Darren took it to Waitrose today, did the food shop, so he switches between the cars and he gave it a little run in just so that it didn't
like it still works.
things up. But yeah, I'm really nervous about getting in a car as well. It's going to be a bit.
My youngest was like that because they've gone back to school for a few days, and when she was in the back, she was like, "Oh my god, it's going so fast! It's going so fast!" Because they were on lockdown 2 weeks before because they had symptoms, so they've been in for ages. And the little one, she was
So
like,
the school
"Oh my
have
God."
all the
Oh, it was
schools
fine.
opened up like
Pardon?
normally now? Have all the schools opened up like normal now? Or
No, mine have gone back. for a few
Right.
days whilst I
Key
work.
workers, so NHS staff, key workers.
They've stayed open, haven't they, for key workers?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
only 5 in our class, so it's quite good. And it's just a little village school, so
Okay,
nice.
that's all right then.
Aw. Yeah, so we'll wrap up gut health tomorrow, guys, and then we'll crack on with a new subject next week. We'll put a little vote out. We'll see what everyone wants to go through. But yeah, any feedback, any questions or anything, guys, just drop me a message.
Will do.
brilliant.
Cool. All right. Well, I will let you guys go. Enjoy
you.
your afternoon.
You too.
Oh, yeah.
You too.
Enjoy it. Look at 4 walls.
See you later, guys.
See you later, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.